Rekindling regret, my dad chose his new family, but a mall encounter shattered our second chance. I am a 16-year-old female and have been living with my mother, 45, since my parents divorced when I was 8. My father, 52, left us for a coworker, who is now his wife, and they have 2 children together, a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. My parents' marriage had been strained for years before the divorce, and I remember frequent arguments, mostly centered on my father's long work hours and his emotional distance from our family. My mother would often cry after these arguments, and I would try to comfort her, not fully understanding the situation. The day my father left remains vivid in my memory. It was a Sunday morning, and I was having breakfast when he came downstairs with a suitcase. He told me he was leaving for a business trip, kissed me on the forehead, and walked out. A week later, my mother sat me down and explained that my father wasn't coming back. At first, I couldn't believe it. I kept hoping he would walk through the door and tell me it was all a mistake. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, it became clear that he was gone for good. Although my mother tried to shield me from the worst of it, I overheard conversations and phone calls, which is how I learned about my father's affair with his coworker. Growing up, I rarely saw my dad. He would often cancel plans at the last minute, forget my birthdays, and miss important milestones in my life. As a child, I would cry and ask my mom why he didn't want to spend time with me. As I grew older, I accepted that he wasn't interested in being a part of my life. There were moments when his absence was especially painful, like in 4th grade during the father-daughter dance at school. I begged him to come, leaving voicemails and sending texts. He promised he would be there but never showed up, and I ended up going with my uncle instead. On my 13th birthday, I invited him to my party, and again he said he would try to attend, but he didn't. Later, I found out he had taken his new family to Disneyland that weekend. That was also when I learned I had half-siblings. Throughout all of this, my mother worked tirelessly to provide for me. She took extra shifts at the hospital, where she works as a nurse, to ensure I had everything I needed. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and more importantly, we had each other. My mom was always there for me, attending school events, helping with homework, and offering emotional support. I remember a particularly difficult time when I was 12 and being bullied at school, which caused my grades to drop. My mom noticed something was wrong and took time off work to help me through it. She spoke to my teachers, helped me with my studies, and even enrolled me in a self-defense class to boost my confidence. She has always been a present and caring parent, willing to go above and beyond for me. Last month, out of the blue, my father called. He said he wanted to reconnect and repair our relationship. I was shocked and unsure how to respond. He suggested meeting for dinner, just the 2 of us. After a few days of thinking, I agreed. The dinner was uncomfortable. My father acted as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't been absent for most of my life. He talked about his job, his new house, and his other children, showing me pictures and praising their accomplishments. He gushed about how his son was a star player on his Little League team and how his daughter was excelling in ballet. As I sat there, I felt increasingly hurt and angry. My father shared stories about family vacations they'd taken and holiday traditions they'd started, and with each one, I felt increasingly like an outsider, painfully aware of all the experiences and memories I had missed out on. Eventually, I couldn't hold back any longer and asked him why he wanted to be in my life now. He looked uncomfortable, admitting he had been reflecting on his past decisions and realized he had made mistakes. He expressed a desire to make amends and become a real father to me. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe him, to finally have the father I had longed for, but another part of me was skeptical and deeply hurt. Why now? Why after all these years? Following that dinner, my dad started texting me regularly. He would ask about my day, my friends, and my hobbies. It felt awkward and unnatural. I didn't know how to talk to him or what to share. My mom noticed something was different, and when I told her about my dad reaching out, she tried to be supportive, but I could see the concern in her eyes. She gently advised me to be cautious and not to get my hopes up too high. A week ago, my dad invited me to spend a weekend at his house with his new family. He said it would be a good chance to get to know my half-siblings and stepmother. Though I was hesitant, he insisted it would be a fun experience, so I agreed to go, mostly out of curiosity. When I arrived at their home, I was overwhelmed. It was much larger and more luxurious than our apartment. My stepmom greeted me politely, but I could sense her discomfort. My half-siblings were shy at first, but warmed up to me over time. However, throughout the weekend, I felt like an outsider. My dad and stepmom exchanged subtle glances when they thought I wasn't watching. My half-siblings shared inside jokes and memories I wasn't a part of, and it was clear they were a cohesive family unit, while I was merely a visitor. I tried to participate in their conversations, but I often felt lost. They talked about family trips I had never been on, relatives I had never met, and experiences I had never shared. My dad tried to include me, but it all felt forced and awkward. At one point, my half-brother asked why he had never seen me before. I didn't know how to respond, and my dad quickly changed the subject. It was apparent they hadn't really explained who I was to the kids. The most painful moment came on Saturday night when we were all sitting in the living room watching a movie. My half-brother cuddled up to my dad, who wrapped his arm around him affectionately. I watched, a lump forming in my throat, as I realized that this was the kind of closeness I had longed for from my dad but had never received. On Sunday, as I packed to leave, my dad came to talk to me. He said he hoped I had enjoyed myself and that we could do this more often. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. On the drive home, he talked about future plans, family vacations, holiday gatherings, regular dinners. I sat in silence, my mind racing. When I got home, I broke down in tears. My mom held me as I cried, not asking any questions, just being there for me. Once I calmed down, I told her everything. She listened patiently, her expression a mixture of concern and anger. Now, I'm left feeling confused and hurt. I'm not sure if I want to continue this relationship with my dad. On one hand, I've always wanted a father in my life. On the other hand, seeing him with his new family made me painfully aware of all I've missed out on and how easily he seemed to move on without me. I'm torn between giving him another chance and protecting myself from further heartbreak. My mom says the decision is mine, though I can tell she's worried about me being hurt again. My friends are divided. Some think I should give him a chance, while others believe I should cut him off entirely. I keep reflecting on all the moments in my life when I needed a father and he wasn't there. The father-daughter dances I attended with my uncle, the graduations he missed, and the times I was sick and wanted him by my side. He hadn't even called. Can you really make up for all of that now? Then I think about my half-siblings and how they get to have the dad I always wanted. It's not their fault, but I can't help feeling resentful. Why does he get to be a good dad to them when he couldn't be one to me? I feel torn. Should I keep trying to build a relationship with my dad, or should I accept that we may never have the father-daughter bond I've always longed for? How do I manage the jealousy and hurt I feel towards his new family? Any advice would be appreciated. It's been a few weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone who commented and offered advice. Your words really helped me think through this situation. After much reflection, I decided to give my dad another chance. I told him I was open to working on our relationship, but that it would take time and effort from both of us. He seemed genuinely happy and promised to do better. For the first 2 weeks, things seemed to be improving. My dad called me regularly, and we even met for coffee a few times. He asked about my life and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I started to feel hopeful that maybe we could rebuild our relationship. During one of our coffee meetings, my dad brought up the idea of me joining his family for their annual summer vacation. He shared how they rent a beach house every year for a week and suggested it would be a great opportunity for me to bond with everyone. I was hesitant, but he seemed so excited that I agreed to consider it. We also had more serious conversations. I opened up about how his absence affected me growing up, sharing stories about times when I really needed him, like when I was bullied in middle school or when I went through my first heartbreak. He listened and apologized, saying he wished he could go back and change things. One day, he even asked to see some of my childhood photos. My mom had kept albums of me growing up, and I showed him a few. As he looked through them, he seemed sad, realizing how much he had missed. He even asked if he could have copies of some of the photos, which made me feel like he truly wanted to be part of my life. However, last week, something happened that made me question everything again. I was at the mall with my friends when I saw my dad with his family. They were shopping for school supplies for my half-siblings. What struck me was how relaxed and happy they all looked together. My dad was laughing and joking with the kids, helping them pick out backpacks and notebooks. I stood there, frozen, watching them unnoticed. I saw my dad pick up my half-sister and spin her around, both of them laughing. It was such a simple, loving gesture, but it hit me hard. I realized that, in all my years, my dad had never done anything like that with me. As I watched them, I remembered all the times I had gone school shopping with just my mom, how he tried to make it fun, even though money was often tight. I thought about how my dad had never offered to help with school expenses, even though he clearly had the means to do so. I left the mall feeling devastated. When I got home, I locked myself in my room and cried. My mom noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her what had happened. The next day, I received a text from my dad asking if I wanted to go to the movies with him and my half-siblings that weekend. I didn't respond. I couldn't bear the thought of pretending everything was fine when I was hurting so much inside. A few days passed, and my dad began calling, asking why I wasn't responding to his messages. I finally picked up and told him what I had seen at the mall. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before he finally started to speak. He began making excuses, saying he was trying his best and that I needed to give him time. I lost it. I told him that he'd had 16 years to be a father to me, but he had chosen not to. I told him how much it hurt to see him be the kind of dad to his other children that he never was to me. I asked him why he couldn't have been that dad for me when I was younger, when I needed him. He didn't have a good answer. He just kept saying he was sorry and that he wanted to make things right, but his words felt hollow to me. I realized that no matter how much he tried now, he could never make up for all the years he missed. I told him about the times I had needed him, the time I broke my arm in 5th grade, and he didn't call to check on me, the time I won a science fair in 7th grade and he said he was too busy to see my project, all the birthdays, holidays, and milestones he had missed. I asked him if he had any idea what it felt like to watch other kids with their dads, while knowing mine didn't want me. I told him about the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what was wrong with me that made him not want to be my father. He tried to apologize again, saying he knew he had messed up but that he wanted to do better now. But I was too hurt and angry to listen. I told him I needed time to think, and ended the call. Since then, he's been texting and calling nonstop, but I haven't responded. I don't know what to say to him. Part of me feels guilty for blowing up at him, but another part of me feels relieved to have finally said everything I had been holding in for years. I feel angry, hurt, and confused. Part of me wants to cut him off completely, to protect myself from more pain. But another part still yearns for a relationship with him, even though I know it will never be what I truly want. My mom has been incredibly supportive throughout this. She's offered to listen if I want to talk, but she's also given me space to process my feelings. I'm grateful for her, but I also feel guilty for putting her in this position. I've been thinking a lot about what I really want for my relationship with my dad. Do I actually want him in my life, or am I chasing the idea of having a father? Can I ever truly trust him not to let me down again? I'm also worried about how this will affect my relationship with my half-siblings. They are innocent in all of this, and part of me would like to know them better. But I don't know if I can handle being around my dad's perfect family. I'm at a loss for what to do next. Should I give my dad another chance? Or is it time to accept that we will never have the relationship I've always wanted? How do I move forward from here? It has been 2 months since my last update, and I've made some decisions that I'd like to share. After taking time to reflect, I decided to have one final conversation with my dad to clear the air and fully express my feelings. We met at a park near my house, a public space where I felt safe and had the option to leave if things became too emotional. When my dad arrived, he looked nervous. We sat on a bench in silence for a few minutes before I began. I told him everything. How hurt I was by his absence during my childhood, how painful it was to see him be a loving father to his other children, and how his recent attempts to reconnect felt too little, too late. I shared specific memories that had hurt me deeply over the years, like the time in 3rd grade when he promised to come to my school play, and I spent the whole performance scanning the audience, only to realize he wasn't there. Or the time in 9th grade when I made the honor roll and called to tell him, but he rushed me off the phone because he was busy. To my surprise, my dad didn't make excuses this time. He listened. And for the first time, I saw real remorse in his eyes. He admitted that he had been a terrible father to me and that he understood why I was so hurt and angry. Then he told me something I never expected to hear. He revealed that when my mom got pregnant with me, he wasn't ready to be a father. He said he felt trapped and resentful, and instead of dealing with those feelings, he ran away from his responsibilities. Even after he left, he admitted that he was too cowardly to face up to his failures as a father. He explained that when he met his current wife, he saw it as a chance to start over and do things right. But in doing so, he completely neglected his responsibilities to me. He said he now realized how selfish and hurtful his actions had been. Hearing this was both painful and liberating. On one hand, it hurt to know that my own father had resented my existence. On the other hand, finally hearing the truth helped me understand why he acted the way he did all these years. My dad also opened up about his own childhood, sharing that his father had been abusive. He explained that he had always sworn not to be like his dad, but in trying to avoid being abusive, he ended up being absent instead. He told me this wasn't an excuse, but rather an explanation of why he struggled with fatherhood. After our talk, I made a decision. I told my dad that while I appreciated his honesty, I wasn't ready to have him in my life right now. I explained that I needed to focus on healing and moving forward, and his presence was bringing up too many painful memories and emotions. He was upset, but he said he understood. He asked if there was any chance for us in the future. I told him I didn't know, but for now, I needed space. He then asked if he could still send me birthday and Christmas cards. I agreed to that, thinking it might be a way for him to show he cares without putting pressure on me for more involvement. Before we parted, my dad handed me an envelope. He asked me not to open it until I got home. Later, when I did, I found a heartfelt letter apologizing for everything, along with some old photos of us from when I was very young. It was bittersweet to see these glimpses of what could have been. Since that conversation, I've been focusing on my own life and well-being. I've started seeing a school counselor to work through my feelings about my dad and our complicated relationship. It's been helpful to talk to someone who isn't directly involved in the situation. My counselor has helped me understand that it's okay to have mixed feelings about my dad. She's also been working with me on building my self-esteem and teaching me not to let my dad's actions define my worth. I've also been spending more quality time with my mom. Our relationship has always been strong, but this experience has brought us even closer. I've realized how lucky I am to have her in my life, and I'm trying to show her more appreciation for everything she's done for me. We've had deep conversations about our family history, and my mom has shared things about her relationship with my dad that I never knew before. It has helped me understand the bigger picture and why things turned out the way they did. As for my dad, he has respected my wishes and hasn't contacted me beyond sending a card for my birthday last month. Sometimes I feel guilty about cutting him off, but most of the time, I feel relieved. I know that this decision was the right one for me, at least for now. I'm learning to accept that my family situation isn't perfect, and that's okay. I'm focusing on the people who have consistently been there for me and on building a future for myself. I've thrown myself into my studies and extracurricular activities. I joined the school newspaper and discovered I really enjoy writing. It has become a way for me to express my feelings and work through some of the complicated emotions I have about my family situation. I've also started volunteering at a local animal shelter. Working with the animals has been incredibly therapeutic, and it feels good to make a difference in their lives. Regarding my half-siblings, I've decided to send them birthday cards through my dad. I don't want them to feel like I don't care about them, even if I'm not ready to have a relationship with them right now. It's been half a year since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been going. The past 6 months have been a period of growth and healing for me. Cutting contact with my dad was difficult, but it gave me the space I needed to focus on myself and my well-being. I've continued seeing the school counselor, and it's been incredibly helpful. We've been working on building my self-esteem and dealing with the feelings of abandonment that I've carried for so long. I'm learning that my dad's choices don't define me or my worth as a person. I'm beginning to realize that I am enough, regardless of his past actions. It's heartening to see how much progress you've made in understanding and prioritizing your own emotional well-being. The realization that your father's actions were rooted in his own struggles and not a reflection of your worth is a major breakthrough in healing. The way you've embraced your independence, invested in your education and hobbies, and deepened your bond with your mom and chosen family is truly inspiring. Your focus on building the life you want, especially with college planning, joining clubs like the debate team, and working at a bookstore, is setting such a strong foundation for your future. It's also wonderful that you've been able to establish new traditions with your mom, like the mother-daughter days, which seem to bring you both a lot of joy and strengthen your relationship even further. Your dad's letter and the update that he's seeking therapy shows that he's making an effort to change, but your ability to take space, despite the complexity of those emotions, is a testament to how much you've grown. The fact that you're finding peace rather than anger when thinking about your relationship with him shows the emotional maturity you've developed. It's okay to take your time with figuring out how, or if you want to reconnect in the future. You're right in focusing on yourself, your dreams, and the people who have always been there for you. It sounds like you're on a wonderful path toward healing, success, and personal growth. Your journey is such a powerful example of resilience, self-awareness, and the strength to redefine what family and support mean. Keep moving forward, allowing yourself the space to feel whatever emotions come up, but knowing that you're more than capable of creating a bright future for yourself. You've come a long way, and your optimism for the future is truly inspiring.